Hi, my name is George Agrimis, and in the next few presentations we're going to be talking about operations management. Operations management is a concept that has changed in its dynamics especially in more recent years, with changes in organizations and changes in even the processes and technology. Another important consideration to modern day operations management is its interrelationship with the supply chain concept. The fact that we're now operating in a global world changes even some of the dimensions of operations management, and in many cases an organization will find its operations actually a subset of the whole supply chain network. So we have to keep that in mind as we go through some of the topics in this course. Operations decisions, as the author tells you, is a framework. It's a systematic process, and the decisions that get made in that process are a framework of integrated decisions and concepts that have to come together. It's also cross-functional in the sense that within an organization there are many different decisions at each functional level that have to integrate with other functions for the whole process to work. Therefore, operations is a process itself, and we will talk about that in the different chapters as we go through it. But the important thing here is to remind you that it is a holistic process and not a set of independent, unassociated modules. The reason why we study operations management is because of some of the comments we just said. It's cross-functional. Every organization includes most of the major functions. You can look at any organization and see that they're either driven by sales or marketing, or by technology or engineering, or even finance, and sometimes even by the human relations aspect. That's becoming more important thing in the next few centuries. But remember, even though it's cross-functional, the integration of those functions is the most important thing. In every course you get a definition of the topic, and this is no different. The authors have defined operations management as a function in an organization that produces and delivers goods or services of value to customers. Important thing in this statement is that it is customer focused and customer driven, which we'll see. Decisions in operations management are things that are almost a daily. There's two types of decisions: long-term planning type of decisions and tactical or daily and weekly and monthly type of decisions. You have to deal with processes, quality issues, capacities, and inventories in most operations. Now, you'll get cases throughout this course that deal with some of the applications of the concepts that we talked about, and when we get to that in each chapter, we'll talk about those cases. Now let's go to the concept of a supply chain. Many of us have ideas of what it is. It originated with the concept of a procurement function within an operation, but since the world has gone so global, it's actually become the driver of an operation rather than just a function or module in it. It includes processing raw materials from the original source through manufacturing, through distribution, ultimately to the end consumer. And the linkage is the most important part of that process. When we, as a primary function, it touches on all functions: marketing, finance, as we said, even engineering and human relations. Those are the four more. But there's a fifth one that also talks about, brings in the IT or the system concept, and that's equally important in today's world. The thing we want to remember is that we should always think of operations as a process. And that process we describe as a transformation process, where you have sets of inputs, which is the raw data that comes in, gets analyzed, gets applied in different ways, and that is where the conversion takes place. And then the result of all that is what we call the output, and the end result of the process itself. It could be the process itself in a manufacturing environment could include fabrication and assembly. There are many other parts to that process as well. Input into the process includes a lot of different factors. Labor traditionally has been one of the key inputs. Materials have to be converted to the end product. But even more important in today's world is the energy and information factors, and ultimately the capital that needs to be invested to translate to the goods or services that we need. We'll take a brief look at the environmental process and where operations places in that. The important thing here is to realize there are outside stakeholders such as suppliers, the government, competition, the customers, and even the community and the environment. Throughout this course, we'll talk about different themes. We'll talk about the difference between manufacturing and service, which is the primary distinction in operations. We'll talk about the role of the customer. We'll talk about streamlining and lean operations, and especially integration, as I've mentioned already, and environmental issues, including the supply chain and the globalization aspect. All of those are important factors. We will get into environmental issues, especially on a global nature, and we'll address some of the economic concepts and thought processes that are taking place worldwide as a result of both operations and supply chain impacts. In the course, we'll talk about a lot of different situations, changes in materials, changes in technology, even the impact of political changes, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Russian government. These are things that have impacted both the environment, the supply chain, as well as the operations philosophies of most organizations. The bottom line is we're in an age of globalization. You never know who the competition's going to be. You have to always think about the competition. And the moral here is that any company who thinks they are so different that they have no competition will eventually be surprised and probably be non-existent. In summary, the purpose of Chapter 1 was to give you an overview of not just a definition of operations management, but a perspective of it. And the comments we just have expressed are intended to do that and linked into the material that you will read in this chapter.